Welcome to the Effortless Mindfulness podcast. I'm Loch Kelly, and this is a show about awakening to the deepest dimensions of who we are by bringing together ancient wisdom and modern psychology. In today's show, we're going to explore the unfolding of the stages of mindfulness. Mindfulness has become an important part of our culture and has been a great benefit to many. My interest here is to give you a full menu that includes some stages of mindfulness that are less known. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to mention that I'm offering an effortless mindfulness training program that goes from learning the method to living it and then to sharing it with others. For those interested, there's a facilitator certification available. I hope you'll take a look. And now, on to the show. So welcome everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the stages of mindfulness. Many of us know mindfulness as a way to focus or be attentive. But this is just the beginning in the unfolding and development of the stages of mindfulness. It's important to begin with what works, and often the first stage of mindfulness is called calm abiding. Calm abiding, peaceful abiding, or what's called shamatha or shine in Tibetan. These two words mean the same thing. And there are different methods to calm our body and calm our mind and really calm our nervous system. In yoga, it begins actually with ethics to restrain yourself from acting negatively, and which is called niyama, and to do positive ethical actions like generosity, which is called yama. And then there are breathing exercises which are more intentional and activate a little deeper breath so that you can begin to do calming practices this way. In Buddhism, the beginning of shamatha practice is often called one-pointed attention, and there's a focus on one of the sense doors, and usually that is the breath. In this early tradition of Buddhism and continued through the different traditions, this is called mindfulness of breath, or has been called focused attention in the study of this in neuroscience research. So that mindfulness is a shamatha practice, and its calming effect is to focus or give the mind a simple task. And by giving a simple task, in neuroscience we call it the task mode network is turned on. And as you notice, when you start to bring your attention to your breath, you'll notice that your attention will wander, or your mind will actually wander back to daydream, or what's called the default mode network, and or to some unpleasant or pleasant sensation in your body, or some daydream of what you're hoping to do in the future, your different planning mind, or different parts of you will arise. Although this isn't as much talked about. Sometimes when they talk about planning mind or judging mind, this is similar to what we call subpersonalities or parts, which we can become mindful of, and we'll talk a little about that. So this first approach, its intention in all systems is calming the animal body and mind. So the way that it's done with attention is to focus the mind on one point using this flashlight type of awareness called attention. And when we do this, we notice that we actually can calm our system because we're not following thoughts, automatic thoughts. We're not following planning thoughts. We're not going to the future. We're not going into the past. We're staying in the present. Now, it's important to make this distinction immediately that we are in the present. And one of the realizations is that we're not in the present moment, because we actually realize that present moments come and go. So this is what becomes the insight of the changing mind, or what's called anicca. So things are changing all the time. You're watching your breath. Your mind is taking you away. You simply bring yourself back to this simple task. And the present time, you have this activity. And then you notice moments are like tick, tick, tick of a clock. Breath, breath in, breath out. Thought comes, thought goes. So the present moment comes and goes. You can be in the present time, or what we'll be talking about later is you can be in the now, which is aware of the present. Could also be present while you're remembering a past memory or planning for the future if you're in the now. So focusing on this use of attention, the research that I was involved in showed that what happens in our brain is that the task mode network, this part of our brain that is focused on external activity, becomes more dominant and actually represses the default mode, or the mind wandering, daydreaming aspect of our mind. The brain is naturally alternating, if it's not tended to in some way, to go to task, what's going on outside, what's going on inside, what's going on outside. So these two modes, networks, look out, look in. And if you just watch somebody's eyes on a subway or a bench, or when someone's sitting across from you, you'll just notice they'll go out and then they'll go in. They'll go out and they'll go in. So, and you'll notice when you do your own meditation that this is what happens. So this has some advantages in its first level of mindfulness and if it works for you, the use of concentration to lightly concentrate. Some traditions just attend to your breath. When your mind wanders, no big deal, bring it back. Other traditions very much counting your breath, or really focusing a little more strongly and immediately catching it when it wanders, bringing it back, or finding this kind of loosening and tightening balance of your breath. And then you find that what you get is this type of calm that is a good treatment of symptoms of stress and distress, of anxiety, and it has some positive effects on the brain. However, this is one type of meditation, and certainly that one-pointed, absorbed focus can't be taken off the cushion into the daily life of interaction. There's another type of mindfulness we'll talk about next that can be, and there's other even further levels that are even more optimal. But this is a calming sitting practice of mindfulness of breath, one-pointed attention, focused attention, using this flashlight method that calms by really giving a simple task that puts the task mode network on. As you step out of your meditation session, you'll notice that after a while, the type of default mode network will come back online with some more identity and self-referencing, and also the more complex ego manager, ego center will start to find its own way of identifying and trying to judge and plan. These different parts of us start to come online. So we've calmed ourselves, but we haven't really gone beyond looking into who is looking or how to apply it in the everyday world. So the next stage of mindfulness, sometimes called insight, the word mindfulness in Pali is sati, S-A-T-I, and it tends to be translated as remembering. So kind of returning or forgetting, being mindless, and then remembering to bring your some type of awareness back. So mindfulness in some ways is, in its bigger sense, as we go along, the common definition is attending to something or connecting with or being in relation to. That's my kind of sense as it gets more broad and more advanced in our ability to function in the world from more of an awake mind rather than just a concentrated attentional absorption. So when we go to the second level of using this flashlight, we kind of pull up what I feel is almost like a street light. Yeah, so you're almost pulling up or stepping out. So this is what I call the mindful move or the mindful step back. So even when we're doing the first type of mindfulness, we're doing it from this usual sense of a me that's focusing on an object like our breath. Now, in what I call subtle mind or mindful witnessing or mindful awareness, the type of awareness that's different than attention, is like a street light that is now feels like some people feel like they step behind thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Some people feel like they're looking almost like a X-ray within body and mind, like a subtler level of observing that moves out of the ego-centered observer to a mindful meditator or mindful witness. Now, this is still a detached point of view. In Zen, they sometimes call it a head upon a head. You've left your head, that usual center of mindfulness of breath that uses this flashlight of attention, and now you have a head that's looking at thoughts, feelings, sensations, and mind objects. So these are the four foundations of mindful witnessing or mindful awareness. In the Satipatthana Sutra, it says that you're aware of thoughts, sensations, feelings. And feelings is not just all emotion. It's the first primary experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So being aware of all the sense doors, right? Hearing, smelling, tasting, sensation, seeing. And there's contact with sense impressions, and then an experience, and then there's some kind of feeling of pleasant or unpleasant, and then often liking or disliking, and then moving to rejecting or trying to hold on to. If it's a positive feeling, we try to hold on to it. Often with a negative impression, we try to defend against it or create a protector against it or So this happens very quickly. This is the series of mind impressions, and that mindfulness is trying to step out to see this, and you can see it. It's almost like a new lens, like you've gone from looking with this pair of glasses at your breath. You're now kind of using a little bit of putting blinders on and focusing with this flashlight on one object. Could be outside of yourself. We talked about the breath. Could be a candle or a word inside in that first stage. And then the second stage, pullback, mindful step back, mindful move of disidentifying or unblending or detaching. But of course, the issue here is that you become a detached or disembodied witness. This can be helpful for insight. And certainly the first insight is that everything is coming and going. So certainly easiest to see senses, like the sensations inside, if you use that more interoception, that subtle mind, subtle body, mindful awareness of this, you'll feel this kind of effervescent aliveness, changing contents of your body. And then you may notice little responses or reactions of liking or disliking, feeling, noticing the feeling of that, and then certainly starting to notice thoughts, which include emotions. But thoughts are coming and going. There's these automatic thoughts that are coming and going, and even the thoughts so that first understanding is that everything is changing. There's a continuous there, and then the next relation to the change is, as you look closer, is you realize, oh, even that one who is focusing on that breath, even that point of view, even that ego center is not a solid, separate thing that has a location in my head at this subtle level. And so this is the insight of anatta, or no self. There's not a solid sense of self that's trying to survive, that is that becomes, when it thinks it's a separate entity within us, it becomes anxious about itself. So it starts as a process to help us survive and recognize how to be safe and thrive and survive outside. But then it starts to become self-referential and create this separate sense of self even within our own body. And when we see that, there can be this relief of no self. Now, for many people, that can be a little frightening to other parts of us, or to our sense of safety, or to that part itself, which is like, look, I got you this far, and I'm trying to help you now. What are we going to do if there's no one here to watch? So this is where we move from the flashlight of attention, from that street light of mindful awareness. Many people will pull back to what's called open awareness, or choiceless awareness, or big sky mind, or witness consciousness. This is still that head upon a head. This is still the detached witness. If you pull the camera back from this point of view, it feels more spacious. There's a little more openness, but it's still this detached witness point of view. The move that is the next move in the stages of Buddhist development, from Theravada, which is the old tradition, to Mahayana and Mahamudra and Vajrayana and Dzogchen and non-dual Buddhism, is to turn the awareness from looking at the contents to have it feel or open, look back through, or rest as awareness of awareness. So just to notice that even though there's this activity, pleasant, unpleasant, there is a dimension when awareness rests, opens, becomes aware of itself inside and out at the subtlest or very subtlest level, or pure consciousness or awake awareness level, just for a few seconds, that there is this awareness that doesn't feel fear, isn't worried, has no pleasant or unpleasant feeling, is open and yet here. It's alert and clear, but it's not using thought to know. It just is here and clear, alert and subtle, like invisible, yet knowing just in its clarity and emptiness of any being a thing. So it's not a open awareness. It's actually this dimension of reality and perception, and that once it's almost like unplugging from this attempt, even with the first two stages of mindfulness, let alone with our usual sense of being a separate sense of self trying to manage and be safe in the world and figure everything out. There's this immediate relief and realization of what's called the nature of mind. The mind that isn't thought-based mind, which in Tibetan is called sem, thought-based mind is this mind, and then nature of mind is awareness-based mind called rigpa. And then rigpa will become more non-dual, more embodied. But for here, we're looking at this third stage, which is awareness of awareness. Now, for me, and for that this just opening that up and discovering this which doesn't come and go becomes this next insight. So the insight of Theravada insight meditation is the insight that everything comes and goes, anicca, and that there is no solid separate self, anatta, and then that there is this when there is no separate self, it doesn't mean there's nothing. It also points to, which is often not described, is that emptiness in that second stage doesn't mean void. It means there is no separate thing called a self, that it's interdependent with thought, feeling, sensation, body, air. Just like a tree is not a separate tree. There's no such thing as a tree as a thing in itself. It just means that there is a tree on one level. Another level, it is interdependent with earth, air, sun, water. So everything's interdependent or interconnected, you could say, but dependent on itself. So there is this dynamic presence. And then what this turning awareness around, or just recognizing the very, very subtlest level of awake awareness, this effortless awareness, just gives you this sense that there's already this awake nature of mind that can't be hurt, that's free, and that's here, and it's the foundation of who we are. In Sanskrit, it's called Turiya. It also means the same thing, pure consciousness. And Rigpa, in Qigong, it's called Wu Qi. So it's the awareness prior to the first Qi, which is energy. So there's something prior to Qi, and then Qi comes in. That's the fourth level. So the third level is this pure awareness. Then the fourth level is that the awareness and the aliveness are not separate. So we're not pulling back to try to do this spiritual bypass of just being this pure awareness. And the pure awareness in this view is not the movie screen in which the movie is happening. It's not even the sky in which thoughts, feelings, and sensations come and go. It's just the subtlest dimension that when you look within a cell, you see an atom. When you look within an atom, you see 99.999% space. It's this awake space that then is what the waves and particles arise from. So it's like an ocean of awareness that's invisible, that is what sensation, vibration, thought, feeling, and your body is made of. So this is called, in that Sanskrit, Turiya is the pure awareness, and then Turiyatita is when pure awareness is the foundation and includes sleep, waking consciousness, dream, and all these other dimensions of what we've been mindful of. So it starts to feel like what's called non-dual, which means the unity of empty, awake awareness and aliveness, or contents. The context and the content are not two. So this feeling of, kind of dropping in, being aware without a witness, being located anywhere. And yet the witness is including the relative level of appearances. So the unity of emptiness and appearance, or awareness and dynamic energy that arises as form. Yeah. So this perception sounds, if you haven't experienced it, sounds like you're trying to get it with your mind. But once you move through these stages of mindfulness and begin to be curious, you can only, once you get to the awareness of awareness, then the curious thing becomes, okay, is everything moving through the awareness like a sky? You could see that, you could feel that, and that's actually a meditative, you've gone backwards to this big sky mind or open awareness. Or as this, for 1 second, 3 seconds, awareness is aware of awareness, now is the next movement or vibration arising from it, as it, like a dancing wave of awareness that patterns into form. So in that movement from the insights of Theravada Buddhism to Mahayana, the Theravada emptiness was the foundation or the insight, emptiness, interdependence. Form is emptiness, right? There's no solid self. Form is emptiness. And then this Mahayana, which became Zen, said, oh, wait a minute. Form is emptiness, but emptiness is also form. So this is this feeling. Now, when we go to the next level of non-dual awareness, which I'm talking about now, which is this fourth stage of mindfulness, is mindfulness from within, or simultaneous mind, simultaneously awareness and aliveness. I would say you add Form is emptiness. Emptiness is interdependence. Interdependence is awake and knowing, and then that empty awakeness is form. So there's some sense that everything's interdependent, and there's a clarity or nature of mind that's aware of it that gives us a relief. So when you recognize this and drop out of the insight that of the what's not here, which is emphasized often in the first stages, 2 stages of mindfulness, that there is an absence of self. There's some people say now, headlessness. There's no, that center that was in our head is gone, and even the mindful witness is gone. There's a feeling of absence, no self. That's the first insight. And then the key becomes in this next level of mindfulness is, well, then who or what is aware? And this gives this pointer directly. It doesn't wait in this direct practice. Effortless mindfulness is called, to say, well, let's look to see if there's a nature of mind that's already here. So as we step out or do that mindful opening, we don't stop at the mindful witness. We go right through to the awareness that is the foundation, and then see that it's interconnected or interdependent with the aliveness. And there's a kind of sense of unity of awareness and aliveness, simultaneousness, a sense of presence, some people would call it, or unity consciousness is what it's called in more in tradition of Sanskrit traditions. And this gives a feeling of safety. There's a feeling of stillness on the level of that which doesn't come and go. And then there's a feeling of bliss or unconditional love that becomes this 5th stage of what I call awake, loving flow awareness. So that as you feel this, it's no longer neutral. That becomes key, is as we're at the end of the 4th stage of mindfulness, simultaneous mind or interdependence of awareness and aliveness, non-dual presence. There's a safety, and there's a feeling of it's not the pleasant and unpleasant of everydayness. It is like a relief or a release and a bliss that isn't the bliss that comes and goes as very intense positive feelings. It's almost as if the most intense bliss you felt is spread out thin throughout the room or throughout the universe. There's a feeling of okayness, well-being, a knowing of being. It's called being, or Thich Nhat Hanh called it interbeing, which emphasizes that interdependence and that we all share this. And this is a realization that is really the foundation of embodied mindfulness or presence or interdependent mindfulness of non-dual presence, really. So some people say, often emphasize, use the word non-dual to say non-dual awareness, as if non-dual is that first step of stepping out of the dualistic into what we're calling the 3rd stage of pure consciousness or awake awareness. But non-dual awareness is only non-dual, is only half of non-dual, because it's only non-dual when it's also rising as the relative, and it's not a separate witness. So that's where this becomes this feeling of being or presence, and there's a kind of a joy and a a freedom that we're not operating from this everyday mind. And this is where we start to experience what I think is bringing in psychology. So we start to bring in the arising is no longer just thoughts, feelings, sensations as we walk around, but it is these functional parts of us or subpersonalities, or, the part that knows, has learned how to do the work we do and knows, and like, oh, right, we got to do this and then we got to do that. So as that arises, the dance now of mindfulness starts moving toward what's called self-leadership, if we're using the self as nature of mind, or self, which is not the small self or ego self, but is this essential true nature or higher self, or true self with a capital S again, whichever language. Because there is a shift of mind, there's a shift of identity, and there's a shift in the type of awareness that we're using in all of this. We're using attention like a flashlight. We're using mindful awareness as a street light. Then we're going to pure awareness, which is like the sky. And then we go to the interdependent awareness, the simultaneous awareness, which is like the ocean arising as waves. So every one of us feels this. It's not, you don't have to feel like you're merged with everything, but there's a sense of safety or friendliness or ease of this interbeing that feels home. And then as we move to this fifth, this awake, loving flow, that there's an ability to work with these parts of us that are functional parts, and we're leading them from this mindfulness, effortless mindfulness that is awake, that has this compassion toward these parts, which can be strong or judgmental, or feel like they're right, or have polarized opinions of, we should do this, no, you should do that, don't do that, this person will think this, what about that, oh no, don't do that, you just stay home, better go, you better get, and then this sometimes called grandparent awareness, self-leadership. Yes, okay, sweethearts, here, let me hear both sides. Okay, and now so there's intentionality from this mindfulness, which is why I keep the word mindfulness in there, in that it's the nature of mind that we're mindful from. And it's relational. It's connected to the parts within us that are arising, that are kind of collapsing or blending us back to being a fearful, oh my God, that's right, I forgot to do that thing. And then there's this presence that is like, yeah, it's right, that's true. And what are we going to do? It's going to be bad. And then there's a feeling of okay, yeah, okay, I hear you. You're upset and anxious, and we'll respond. So let's see what's the best, given that we've bumbled along as a human being and made some kind of mistake. We can in relative world, which we will continue to do, we can respond and begin to show up with and notice the parts that feel guilty, or parts that feel shame, parts that feel judgmental, and just start to unburden them, which becomes this psychological work of effortless mindfulness, which I bring together with psychology, and particularly internal family systems, which I find to be just a simple version of a parts-based psychology that has language that acknowledges this self that I'm talking about, but also has very clear sense of managing parts, protector parts, exiles or shadow parts, that gives a sense of what actually happens when we're walking around during the day, and how we tend to lose our mindfulness and become contracted or identified back with a small ego center or sense of self, or trauma begins to arise that hasn't been healed, takes us over, comes up the back, and starts to shake and send cortisol and adrenaline through our body, we can still, just because that's happening doesn't mean there's an actual threat, that we can have this view that is spacious and pervasive, wise and loving, unconditionally loving. So not even compassionate, but unconditional love, that there's no conditions. Love is who I am. And from here, you start to have this unfolding of mindfulness from your nature of mind, which has this two truths, which called, or non-duality, that the ultimate reality and relative reality are not two. So it starts to be this sacred, or this tantric, gentle tantric path of seeing everything as just unfolding presence that can be responded to rather than reacted to, and that there's a sense that all is well, and that things are unfolding, and that life will continue to have ups and downs and difficulties, and it doesn't get, not manifesting this perfect world outside and doesn't protect from stuff happening. But the response to it is now coming from this mindful self-leadership, not from the small mind, not from the mindful witness, not from pure consciousness, not just even from just being, but the being that's seeing and the being that's doing. So this meditation in action, or what's called non-meditation. Yeah. So this is this feeling of mindfulness as it unfolds in our life, and it's learnable, it's teachable, it's livable. It certainly is not something that's instantaneous, but it is almost like an adult growing up and waking up process that is possible. And then when we combine the ancient wisdom and the neuroscience and the research-based psychology that is that heals and that attends to what hurts the most and doesn't deny it, but also doesn't deny this presence. So this presence, this awake consciousness, this self with a capital S, this nature of mind, is the most precious jewel. It's the ultimate medicine, discovering it and then discovering that it's not separate from, and that we can be aware from within, even as we're shaking and baking with terror or rage or fear, that what's arising is not even something we're doing. It's happening. It's arising from our conditioning, from our subconscious, or and so it's not about taking our spiritual temperature by what's arising, but who or what does it arise to, and what's the relationship to it. So often in the other stages of mindfulness, and even mindfulness as it's combined with psychology, there's kind of either a replacement of, if you're having ants, automatic negative thoughts, you replace them with positive thoughts. So this is relatively helpful on a first level of mindfulness. Then second level of mindfulness is mindfulness. And psychology tends to be kind of cognitive-based mindfulness, which you just see like, oh, there's anxiety, I'm worried about this. Well, just see that it's just a thought, it's just a story, and just dissolve it with the mindful awareness, and then it goes away, but it'll come back. So even those two systems, we're working from small mind or mindful awareness. It's not until we get and discover this relief of awake awareness that's embodied, that is home and is mindfulness of interdependence and the vastness that there's a boundless heart, that we've dropped from head mind to what's called heart mind. And in this heart mind, there is this sense of wisdom and love coming together, and we can be mindful from here, from our heart mind, and from this vast loving presence, and that we can see within everyone that we meet that they have parts of themselves that are confused and hurt and angry and protective, and they have this true nature within them, and they have this support of awake awareness behind their back, so that we discover the awareness that's arising as our body and connected to everybody. There's this new awake loving flow, and then we can actually focus from this simultaneous mind, which is aware behind us, within us, and we don't have to focus from our small mind using attention anymore. We can effortlessly focus, and I'll talk more about that in another time, another video. But for now, just to say that there's this highly functioning, which is why I use the word flow, because flow has these qualities of optimal functioning, trusting all the information that's been poured in and learned through your system that you can use to function without having to create a doer or check all the time. But there's a trust that there is a flow consciousness, which is not kind of guessing or kind of low level intuition, which is, or gut feeling. It has some of that, but it is really it has a quality of being in the now, which is here and in relation to time slows down, and there's a presence, and there's a sense of panoramic connection to everything that you're doing. So this becomes a kind of playful, loving mindfulness. Beyond the Meditator. In this effortless mindfulness version of insight meditation, we're going to go beyond the view from the meditator. We'll begin by focusing on our breath and then move to mindfully witnessing sensations and thoughts. Then we will notice the location of the mindful meditator. We'll shift from having the mindful witness be the subject to realize it is an object to our awareness-based effortless mindfulness. Effortless mindfulness is then aware of our breath and body sensations from all around and from within. Sit comfortably and be aware of your body supported on a chair or a cushion. Begin to be aware of your felt sense of breathing at one specific area of your body. Notice the feeling of your body in this one area as your breath naturally comes and goes. Now notice sensations in your whole body as sensations come and go. Now notice thoughts like mental sensations coming and going. Notice your breath again in this one area of your body. Notice the feeling and the specific location in your body of your breath. And now become aware of the area you are focusing from. Feel local awareness unhook from the focusing location and open up into space all around. Open to the space that is aware of the location you were focusing from. Open awareness back and out until you are aware of spacious awareness. Now, be aware from spacious awake awareness of the space, your body, sensations, and the location of your breathing all at once. Feel that you are aware from the spacious and pervasive awareness that is effortlessly aware of thoughts, feelings, and sensations, like a seamless ocean of awareness arising as the waves of your breath and body. Enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can get a 14-day free trial of the Mindful Glimpses app, with hundreds of glimpses available. And rather than ask for a donation, if you like the content of this podcast, would you please give this a rating and review? That would be great help. Thanks so much. Until next time, take care.